Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Lore of Braunhaven. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the colonies. In particular, we're going to be talking about the Arabashian colonies in Tlaxiuitl. So, the colony for Arabashia is based out of Port Shaaheen, and it is run. I was going to say ruled, but I don't necessarily know that ruled is the correct word, but yes, it is ruled by Sheikh Salim Al Abrahim. And the Sheikh is a current age noble of Arabashia. And what I mean by that is that a lot of the nobility presently in Arabashia gain their wealth following the War of the Heavens. And so they are, I guess the modern day term would be new money, comparatively. When the coming of the three occurred, the archdevil that ruled in that region pretty much enslaved everybody and laid waste to the entire region, and so there was no nobility for about 150 years. They were all treated equally. They were all slaves. When I say equally, that means bad. They were treated terribly, and so following the War of the Heavens, and really following also uh, the Jin Wars, there was a new class of nobility, and the Salim family um, kind of they made their fortunes not only in the trade and mercantile markets, but when when all of that shook out, the Grand Caliphate at the time put in great efforts to rebuild Arabashia, and he had great plans to essentially bring back the Golden Age, and that's a little bit difficult to do because the the uh, the current government that was decided on, uh, there was a second caucus that had all of the caliphs meet, and they decided how they were going to move forward. They didn't want to devolve back to the ancient times before the Grand Caliphate of basically petty wars amongst one another. And so they met once again and they decided that they were going to create another Grand Caliphate. But this time they weren't going to put it under pharaonic rule. In the first Grand Caliphate was ruled by pharaohs, and being a hereditary position, there was no real way of controlling who was in power. And so you would have the first pharaoh was great. He did amazing things, and it led Arabashia into a grand golden age. The pharaohs that followed him were, some were good, some were bad, some were really bad, and a lot of that comes about because uh, the pharaoh's sons, if the pharaoh would have a lot on his mind, so child rearing and raising was probably not first and foremost, and it led to some of the children, the sons that would be inheriting pharaonic rule, they would end up being spoiled, just spoiled rotten, and they didn't have what it took to rule a nation like Arabashia. And so they wanted the caliphs wanted to avoid that situation, and so they created the Grand Caliphate and created the Grand Caliph. And this government system that they set up, the Grand Caliph really serves at the behest of the other caliphates in Arabashia, and they all work together. That's not to say that he doesn't have a lot of power. He does. He is the head of state, but he also has to play the politics game of keeping all of the other caliphates in line, or appeasing them in some way. And so this first Grand Caliph, he set about doing great public works projects. And one of the things that uh, he really wanted to focus on was to bring back the lost knowledge from that golden age, because after the devils, or after the archdevil came, they pretty much looted or destroyed all of the centers of this ancient knowledge. They had Arabashia thrived in the sciences, mathematics, even the arcane sciences and the divine. They were at the pinnacle of technology for the known world. And so he wanted to bring all of that back. Unfortunately, a lot of that was built on the backs of slaves. Later, the most is it the, I think it's the most current Grand Caliph. I wrote it and I don't remember. That's how it works sometimes. That's why I wrote it down, but I'm not going to look it up. The slavery in Arabashia was um, abolished, and it was, believed, looking at the rest of the known world, they wanted to be a part of that, and they opted to um, remove slavery. They kept indentured servitude, though. So if you were in debt, or you had committed a crime, there would be an indentured servants period that some of the sentences for these indentured servitude could go for anywhere from 20 to 100 years. Most people wouldn't be alive by the time that their servitude, or their indentured service, was done. And so there are options that would allow one to buy their freedom, but indentured servants make very little income, and so it's nigh impossible to get out. So even though slavery has been abolished, there is still some slavery in Arabashia. But the Salim family, post War of the Heavens and the Jinn Wars, made not only their income, their wealth from mercantile endeavors, but also from the mandate put forth by the Grand Caliph to go out and refind, loot some of these old temples, partially destroyed temples and ruins, and find the ancient texts, find the lost sciences, and bring them to Jasrua, the capital of the Grand Caliphate of Arabashia, and bring those in, and so that they can rebuild that golden age. And that right there is how the Salim family made their fortune. Several generations went out looting tombs for this information and brought it back to Jasrua, and they were very well rewarded for it. And so Sheikh Salim El Ibrahim he's lived a gifted life, but he is not without skill. He is an accomplished knight. Specifically, I can tell you he is a 12th level knight, and he there's not really any wars for Arabashia, and hasn't been for some time. So he does a lot of training, and when this whole endeavor started for him, it would have been a difference between you being trained in something and then using it in actuality. There is usually a vast difference. And that difference lies in the fact that you have to use your training to adapt to the situation. If you can't adapt to the situation, then it doesn't matter how much training you have. And so he actually ended up being fairly good at adapting what he had learned as a knight. And he really sees himself more as an explorer. He doesn't see himself as the fighting man. He doesn't see himself as the nobility. He sees himself as an explorer. And so he went to the Grand Caliphate and even offered to put up some of his own money. There was already information coming out of the Glaucian Empire and out of the Arentian Empire that they had learned from merchants that there was this large continent of Tlaxiuitl, and he wanted to be a part of that. He wanted to find and carve out Arabashia's place there, and so the Grand Caliph granted him that, and he set sail across the Astraean Sea and established Port Shaaheen on the southwestern coast. He personally led many of the expeditions. He named the Hibon River after his deceased son, um, coincidentally named Hibon. Uh, he actually went up the river, discovering that these were not two separate rivers; that there was an east and a west fork of the Hibon River, and went all the way up to its headwaters that flows out of Lake Chickamomek or Chickamemek, and he personally established a second location, Fort Bassam, and Fort Ayub on the or just to the west of the shoreline of Lake Chickamemek, and so he has a personal hand in everything that goes on with the colonies here in Tlaxiuitl, and he has already established good relations with the temple of the Aktui people here and the village of Yamak and Nokli. He hasn't done what some of the well, he hasn't done what the Glaucian Empire did. The Glaucian Empire came in and tried to just immediately enslave everybody and loot their wealth, and that didn't work out well for them. And so whether or not Salim knew that is really up in the air. But he chose to not go that route. In fact, he hasn't really even brought any of the Aktui people themselves into any kind of indentured service. He treats them as their own nation. He's actually a fairly just ruler, and his disposition is good chaos. He's a just ruler. He's not a bad guy. Because of how well he treated or continues to treat the Aktui people, it came as some surprise when reports came back to Port Shaaheen that Fort Ayub lay in ruins. That it had been attacked, and or the assumption was that it was attacked. But he sent parties to investigate, and what they found was that there was just simply nobody there. They found some freshly dug graves, uh, but not nearly enough to account for all of the people that were in the fort, and everybody else was just gone. There was a logbook found from the commandant of the fort, and it was scant on details. There was some evidence that parties had been sent from Fort Ayub after the Tlaxiuitl ruins had been found, and that perhaps they went there to investigate. But nobody knows at this point what caused the people to just vanish or where they went. And so Sheikh Salim takes this very personally. He has a personal touch as far as every person that he rules over. I mean, probably not every single person, but the important people at the very least, and the troops that he would send out to the forts, he has shook each of their hands. So he takes this all very personally. He has an open hand out to any adventurers that are willing to explore the Akalan Peninsula. In the name of Arabashia and Port Shaaheen, and definitely has his hand open to anyone that would be interested in investigating the Fort Ayoub ruins and discovering what happened to the people there. And as is typical for Arabashian tradition, Sheikh Salim is, of course, very willing to pay a large amount of coin and treasure to those that assist him in this endeavor. So it is a open call for adventurers of every stripe. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about the area. Port Shaaheen is actually a fairly large port. It would be perhaps not considered a full-size city, but it is a very large town, and it can be considered at this point to be fairly modern as far as the current age goes. They are right on the very edge of the jungle, and there are a number of services. There are trade ships that move from Port Shaaheen to Jasrua consistently. If not every other week, then at least once a month, there are ships arriving and leaving to go back. So what they are finding. They are looting, of course, or finding mines. There are several mines in the mountainous regions. And they're, of course, taking all of that precious ore and stone back to Jasrua, making Port Shaaheen very rich. But there are also modern conveniences, and one of the biggest sellers of that region is insect repellent. The insects here, of course, in Tlaxiuitl are large. A going saying is that everything on this continent wants to eat you or kill you. And there's some truth to that. Um, there are unguents that are available, um, specifically named. I have it here. Molson's insect repellent, and it is a mix of citronella, lemon, eucalyptus, peppermint, lavender, geranium, thyme, clove, rosemary oils, and a bit of vinegar mixed with petroleum jelly. And this is a very pungent mix, and you just slather this on your exposed skin, if not your entire body, and the insects will leave you alone for up to 8 hours. The scent seems to wear off enough after 8 hours that most of the insects in the region will continue to bother you after that point. It'll even one of the creatures that is common in Tlaxiuitl is the sturge, and there are giant sturges, and they are quite dangerous. Unlike mosquitoes, they will just drink you dry. And I'm double checking. I think the sturge was renamed, if I remember correctly. Maybe the Strix. But there are giant varieties of this creature, and they will fly down and suck your blood. But Molson's insect repellent will even keep them at bay. And so there was a large market. And it usually sells for about 5 gold pieces per tin. It comes in a small round tin canister. 5 gold pieces for a 10 is usually good for 1 day, so 1 8-hour period. So if you're going to go out into the jungle, you're going to want to stock up and buy several tins of this before heading out. And each member of your party is going to want some. Otherwise, they are going to have problems with the insect. And the insects, aside from just the biting and unpleasantness of that, but they also carry jungle-borne diseases, and so not wearing insect repellent is definitely not advised. The other thing to keep in mind is the intense humidity of the region, and it is hot, of course. It is very hot, usually averaging about anywhere from 85 to 95 degrees, which is hot, but it's not. In my opinion, it's not. It's not the extreme danger limit of over 100 degrees. But what you do have to contend with is the massive amount of humidity, and the jungles of Tlaxiuitl are so dense that the canopies are completely enshrouded, and they keep that moisture down low beneath the canopy. They create their own weather systems. It can rain under the actual canopy of the jungle in spots, and so you have this constant humidity. So 95 degrees is now feeling like 108. And if you're wearing heavy armor, such as chainmail or plate, uh, you're going to have issues. In fact, you're talking about half the day's movement rate. You're becoming exhausted. You're going to be making more constitution checks moving through the jungle because of the weight of your armor. So most people that are exploring Tlaxuitl at most are wearing light armors, leather. Even that is quite warm, but it's better than the other options. The Oktui people will wear like a leather chest piece and nothing but like a cloth tunic with no sleeves underneath, just as some padding. They don't they hardly wear any armor at all. And so this of course, people that are new to the region, especially knights and paladins and fighters, they're going to be kind of balking at the idea of going without their armor. But it's either, if you're going on a large trek through the jungles, it's either that or die by the heat and the insects. So that is the Port Shaaheen, the Arabashian colony in Tlaxiuitl. Next time we'll be talking about the Orentis colonies in Tlaxiuitl. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.